Okay, so let's start talking about capture groups. The first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to toss this real quick, is we need to actually go back to the context and start doing some other things. In fact, I'm going to make the context do a couple things for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of provide an interface for this stack that's a little more convenient. So I'm going to break everything by making that private, and I will create a public void push int whatever I that will map to stack.push I, and we'll have a public public int pop, which takes nothing and maps to stack.pop, right? And now I will go through the error list down here, if I can get to it. And every single one of these guys, we're going to do this. It's probably a better way to do this. Find and replace. Context.stack. Place it with context. Okay. Greedy will have the same thing. Let's do it in the current project. Okay, let's build that, make sure that works. It does not. That's okay, we'll just get rid of this one. That was just complaining about the length of the stack there. That's okay, we'll do it some other way. Okay, so, and this is going to become important because there's actually two different kinds of things I want to be able to push onto the context. We're actually going to have another stack, which is going to be used to be more interesting, and it's going to be used to keep track of all the different things that we've already captured. And we'll be able to push information on there about a capture group, and we'll be able to pop off a previously matched capture group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something top level here. So let's add a class top level, to the project, and it is going to be capture info. And this is going to be a public struct capture info, and it will have a public constructor, and it will have public read only int beg and group ID, and that's that. And then it will have a I guess we'll need the key. Are we gonna need the key? We'll just leave it public for now. This will make sense later. So int beg int n, so this will be the from and to indices, int group ID, which is going to be which capture group it corresponds to, right? Because I could have multiple capture groups, and int key. Okay, so then this dot beg equals beg, this dot end equals end, this dot group ID equals group ID, and this dot key equals key. Okay. So a capture info is really just going to store beginning and ending indexes for where the match begins and ends, and a group ID, and a key, which will come up later. I guess we'll also, for giggles, we can throw in a public int property that maps, length, which maps to end minus begin plus 1, like that. And this won't make a lot of sense right now, but I'm going to, in fact, write this in such a way that I'm going to test if that is less than the end, and if so, I'll use beginning. Otherwise, I'm going to use the end. And this is going to become an issue later. All right, beginning less than end. Sorry, I can't think and talk at the same time. Then end, otherwise begin. Okay, so this is important because let's just suppose, and there will be some cases later, where we have an index, we say, okay, this is where I started, and then at the end of matching, which succeeded, the pointer is somewhere preceding that. What I would like is for this to be beginning to be the earlier index and for end to be the later index. So if they're ordered in the normal order, then this is begin, that's end, or vice versa. Okay, so that's capture info. So now, something that I need to do is, well, I need a capture group thing. So let's add a new class. This will be a group. And I'll put it over in this window. And it's a subclass of match single base, right? And I also want to add the constructor. So what else is going to be added to this constructor? So I guess public read-only int group ID. In fact, maybe I'll just do this like one of this way, int group ID. Call that good. In case we need logic around it, which I don't think we do, but that's fine. And then in the constructor, we will take group ID. If I could type group ID. And we say group ID equals group ID. Like that. This is not getting better. Okay. I think we're good now. So the cool thing about this is that now this is something that operates just on a token, right? What does it capture? Well, does it capture? I guess that's one question. So what happens when I match? Well, first thing I want to write down is starting offset equals context dot offset. So I will say where are we at right now, and I will hold on to that for a second, because if the match item that is passed into me, right, the thing I'm capturing matches, then I'm going to check the offset and say here's where it is now. I'm going to generate a capture info structure, well, instance kind of, for this particular group, and that will be that time that it matched. So that's that. So let's say bool result equals match item dot match on context, right? So if that succeeded, then I need to write down some information. So I will do, in fact, I'll write it like this. So first thing that's important to note is that there's no change in logic here, right? So it will always be the case that I'm returning the result. The capture group doesn't succeed or fail in any way of its own. It just tags along, right, for the ride. So if I did succeed, then what I need to do is store this new capture info information. So what I'm going to write here is context dot push, and this is a push method that isn't written yet, so it's going to have multiple parameters. So there's going to be starting offset, context dot offset, and group ID. Okay. Now this method doesn't exist, so let's create it. And what this will do is it's going to store, on the back end, it's going to go to the context and it's going to store a brand new one of these over here. So, well, I'll just leave it here, that's fine. Okay, so here's my new push method. And what does it do? It takes a starting offset and an ending offset and a group ID. And then we create var capture info equals new capture info of starting offset, ending offset, group ID, and key, whatever key is. Now, what is key? What's key about this? So what's going to happen is we're going to, well, think about what really happens. If I capture something and it's inside a repetition, for example, if I have a capture group inside repetition that's whatever, one or more times, if I have just, parentheses, a, something like this, where literally now we're talking about capturing, then I can run this capture group a bunch of times and it's going to capture things a bunch of times. And that's great, except that it's going to be, we're going to run into some problems downstream when we need to restore the stack back to where it was. And I guess really we're not quite there yet because we don't have the atomic ones. The atomic stuff, once it's captured, and then if an atomic gets backtracked into, all of the state needs to get restored back. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is where the key is going to come in. So for now, I'll just leave that as a 0 and I'll say to do handle the key parameter here. Okay, so how am I going to, well, I need to put this somewhere, so let's at least do that. Related to that, I'm going to have the following. So let's do one of these. Let's do private sorted dictionary that takes integers to a stack of capture infos, and we will call it capture stack, and it is going to be a new one of those. All right, what the heck is this? Let's give us some real estate here. So what this is this is how I just chose to design it. Maybe this isn't the best thing in the world, but whatever. So it works like this. So there's going to be some number of indexes, right? Some number of capture groups that may or may not actually have data in them. So 0 is the entire regular expression, so that one's always going to have hopefully one entry. 1, let's say we have a single capture group here. This is going to map to a dictionary, which is going to be a list of all of the individual number of times. It's all of these guys. It's a stack of capture info. So it's every time one has matched, it gets pushed onto capture stack entry 1, because that itself is a stack for capture group number 1, right? And then if capture group 1 matches again, then I push onto capture stack record 1, and I'm good to go. So that's what's going to let me, that's why I have these two different pushes here. So what I'll do is I'll just create this new capture info, and I will say capture stack dot, what do I want here? Well, I want capture stack of group ID dot push and that. Now the thing that this is going to crash, right, if I'm not careful, so I do need to check that that's not null, but I'll do it lazily, right? I prefer not to create 10 stacks unless I need them, because I frequently won't. So if capture stack of group ID equals null, actually I can't write it that way. If capture stack dot contains key group ID, if that's not true, then capture stack of group ID equals new stack of capture infos. Okay, so then I can push onto it. All right, and that should work. So that is that, so that lets me push things on here. So when I match, if I get called and I take a snapshot of the offset, if my item matches, then I will push this information onto the context, and this push will, by virtue of its construction, will push it onto this capture stack and say, make note of these 2 points and tag them to this group ID, right? So this video is getting long, so I'm going to cut it off here, but what we're going to have to do is come in here and add obviously supporting methods like pop and peek, which are going to let us do a couple things, like get access to the value of what was captured and all that sort of stuff. So that's coming up next.